Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk About. This evening, we're going to be talking about the US elections that have happened not just 2 weeks ago, but kind of over a period of quite a few days, and it feels like it's still going on. But I'm here this evening not just as Lilli from Germany, because that wouldn't be very interesting. But I'm also here with Jasmine, my colleague. Hey, Jasmine, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, all right. I'm excited about this evening, and I'm really intrigued to have you, but also to have Reena with us. Good evening. Well, not quite good evening because it's kind of good morning
Good
for you.
morning.
Yes. What time is that where you are at the moment?
It's 11 a.m.
Okay, and where are you? I mean, people can kind of work it out with the time difference, but tell us, where are you at the moment?
I am in Oregon in the United States.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to hear you guys chatting. Just to explain, Reena is Jasmine's mum. So if you have any questions about Jasmine as a child, this is your chance to ask them and post comments, and Reena can through all the fun stories and so on. But obviously, we are here this evening to talk about the elections, as I already said, and I'm really excited to have Jasmine and Reena because they are both American citizens. They have very different experiences. Jasmine is currently in the UK. She is a bit further down on the other side of Guildford. Reena is in the States at the moment, so really excited to have you both with your experiences, your backstories as well, because obviously that plays into how you experience this season at this moment. But welcome to anyone who's watching us. Do ask any questions if you have them, and feel free to comment, and we're hoping to answer those questions as we proceed through this next half an hour. But Jasmine, why don't you tell us first a little bit more about how this whole election works? Because I think some people are slightly confused how works-wise Trump kind of, not happy. Well, we know why he's not happy with the results, but why is he pressing charges against certain states, and how does it work? What's going on? Tell us a little bit more.
Yes, I'm so happy to share a little bit about the election process. So it all starts earlier in the year when we have our primary election. And so people from, depending on in your states, you vote for who you want to actually be on the ballot in November. From there, anyone that's eligible to vote can vote for the president as well as other offices, but everyone casts their vote, and ballots are happening at the local level. And so each state has a number of electors based off of population. So we actually don't directly vote for the president. We vote, and then based off that population, the majority will, whoever wins, will then, the electors will cast their vote for the majority of the population. So for example, in Oregon, if the majority in this case voted for Biden, then all electoral votes will go for Biden. This is true of all states except for Maine and Nebraska. They have a little different of a system, but whoever wins the majority of each state, the electors then are chosen to vote for that majority. And so once all 50 states are declared, then the electors will vote. So they have yet to vote, I think, in this election. They just declared each state, which gives the opportunity for lawsuits to be filed for the different states because of concerns for voter fraud from the Trump campaign. But yeah, that's a little bit of a broad overview of the election process.
So I wasn't actually aware of that process. I'm learning something new this evening as well. So you wouldn't have a percentage of 20%. Well, no, let's hope a little bit more. So say 70% voted for Biden or for the Democrats, and 30% voted for the Republicans. So therefore, you get 3 electoral votes for this and this. But it's majority gets it all.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. So, Reena, over to you. And again, anyone who's watching, if you have any questions, do get involved. We're talking about the US elections at this moment. we're talking about it at this moment, the elections have happened, to comment and to ask any questions, and we are hoping to just to answer them. But Reena, you said you shared you're in the States at the moment. What is the situation? What is the feeling like, the atmosphere being in Oregon specifically?
So, being here, obviously it just depends on how active you are. Um, the popular vote, which is the individual votes, really showed that the country is pretty divided. The East Coast and the West Coast, where I am, tended overall to go more to Biden, and the center of the country kind of went more to Trump, although there's pockets of both, no matter where you're at. So it just kind of, I think the biggest thing this year, on top of COVID fatigue and everything else, is it has really shown the polarity in your day-to-day life. It doesn't necessarily come up, but at the same time, in a simple Zoom call with your team members at work, it may come up. Politics is kind of one of those things that no matter what you're doing, if you're doing it as a group, people will say, don't bring up politics, because people have strong feelings. Yesterday was actually the first time that I've experienced this since living in the US. I immigrated here as a small child. Yesterday was the first time that I saw post-election protesters on street corners by the grocery store and the bank bringing up the validity of the results and ballots being recounted, which I hadn't seen before. We always have campaigning before elections, but I had never seen that before. So that was a little bit different. But I think, as a nation, there's parts of the country, and definitely in your day-to-day life, where you may not see anything, and there's other areas that tend to have more protest or vocal people, where you're going to see more things going on in the community, space by space.
Thanks for sharing that. I just have a quick question. So how do you feel this election, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe expanding more on how this election has been different from previous elections? I know I kind of remember watching the Obama elections growing up, but previous to that, what was it like for you watching, and how has things changed to get to this point of division?
So, I come from a diverse background. Just our family as a whole is diverse politically as well as ethnically. And this election, definitely following it, we had more voters than ever before. So to see people participate was wonderful. There's more popular votes than ever before. But definitely it was, most states, when you were looking at results, were very much, 49% to 50% or 48 to 49, just very close numbers. And even locally here in the city that I live in and the neighboring city, the election happened the same day for our local mayors, and there's still not a result because the numbers are too close. So that it's been the first time that I've really seen it that way. And I mentioned to Jasmine post-election, my social media feed, it didn't matter what side you were on. It was almost the identical sentence I saw friends posting. People who supported Biden said, I can't believe half the country supports Trump. And people who supported Trump were saying, I can't believe half the country supports Biden. And both of them were saying, there's no way it's possible that many people think the opposite than I do. So that has come up, which I don't recall ever seeing that in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it gives us a little bit more insight on what's going on, just the general attitude of the U.S. At the moment. So thank you for that.
That is very interesting. How is it so you shared already a little bit that you immigrated when you were a little child. Where are you from originally?
So I'm Indian by nationality, but I was born in the Fiji Islands, as were my parents. And we immigrated to the San Francisco Bay Area of California when I was young. So I grew up in California and then relocated to Oregon, where my husband is originally from, when Jasmine was young. And my husband's parents were born in Lebanon. And so Jasmine is a biracial child, half Lebanese and half Indian. by ethnicity. So when we moved from Fiji, Fiji was still under British rule until the 70s. We just became independent in the 70s. And so when we came to the US, my parents had never had the opportunity to vote before. And it's a process from the time you immigrate to your citizenship. But by the time I turned 18, I was a citizen. And I remember very clearly each of my parents' citizenship processes and them getting the right to vote for the first time. And it was standing in line to do it. And my parents always instilled in me that that was a right that people in other countries don't necessarily have, and you never waste it. And regardless of what the circumstance, you always take time to vote. And you don't have the right to complain if you don't do it.
Yeah.
So if you don't cast that ballot, then don't complain about the outcome either way, because you chose not to participate. So that's we have a long voting history in our own personal family. Sometimes we don't vote for every single thing on the ballot if we don't feel educated about it, but we make sure we learn as much as we can so we can make a reasonable attempt at it.
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear. How is it for you? Because you must have had friends from all sorts of different cultural backgrounds. Do you see that votes are depending on where you're from as well, what your cultural background is more, or do you see it that's kind of split and it's still you can't really say that people from more an African descent they would vote more for Biden, or how do you experience that in your friendship groups?
In my friendship groups, I would honestly say that I've been fairly surprised. I've been surprised by traditionally people of various ethnicities were tended to be more on the Democratic side. However, in this past election, I've had very vocal friends who are of various ethnicities that are absolutely Trump supporters. And I've had lots of friends who are Caucasian come out very openly for Biden. So that has been a little bit surprising for me. Myself personally, one of those things that my dad taught me is that we have a secret ballot for a reason, and he never shared how he would vote, and I never share how I vote. I like to hear both sides. The thing that I will say is I think predominantly I saw it more along age lines.
Oh, interesting.
I think more young people were supportive of a change. And I think more of the older people that I saw, and maybe it's just, in my realm, the people that I know, were more on the conservative side of voting. And with record numbers of voters, that may have played a part in that.
That's really interesting, especially hearing that and I haven't obviously Brexit is a big thing here. Obviously, to having that kind of in the back of my mind and knowing that the older generation voted for Brexit, whereas the younger generation would vote to remain. So that's quite interesting to see how there's a rift going through the generations in that. And I mean, to a certain degree, we've always seen that, but it's quite interesting that, and now we can see that, quite predominantly and quite clearly as well.
I think sometimes it's, when you're younger, you may vote, I don't want to say on an emotional level, but you vote for more of the social causes and the humanity of decisions. And as you get older, you're thinking about your retirement fund, your job, supporting your family, more of maybe the financial or economic ramifications of how you vote. And maybe that's when people make switches. At the same time, I think that there's even another generation of those retirees that are older. I'm talking about the 70, 80, 90-year-olds that voted this time. And they come across on the news all the time. And maybe they have gone back a little bit more to the humanity of it. Because, and realistically, it has to do with what you've lived through. if you've lived through the Depression and world wars, and
Mm.
your views on voting are going to be different from if you are still living at home. I mean, at 18, you may still be in high school living at home and everything is provided. So
Yeah.
passing a law or supporting a person that may raise your taxes or reduce your taxes or may just not be in your thought process currently
Yeah.
doesn't affect
Yeah. That reminds me when I was working on my ballot and asking you, like, as someone who pays income tax, like, what does income tax look like and how would this implicate your income tax? Because I don't pay that. I don't know how much it
Mm.
costs. And so actually knowing what those costs might impact the way I vote one way or the other. So yeah, I definitely can see that as far as just being aware. If I didn't have you to
Yeah.
ask, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. I have to be honest, I've never thought of asking so many in-depth questions about the people I vote for, and that's really bad. And I love, and I'm inspired by you how in depth you think about those things and ask those different questions. And I think that's certainly something we can learn from you both, to ask those questions and to consider the different generations, not just our own generation. And I think my generation is certainly prone to think about the next generation as well. A lot more, but actually thinking about what about the generations that have gone before us, and how does whatever I vote impact them? I think is very, yeah, just, yeah, I'm inspired. Thank you. So talking about being inspired, Kamala Harris has made it, and she is the elect vice president. What are your thoughts on that? Because obviously she is the first in many different ways, to the first woman, the first female of mixed race background as well. So what are your thoughts when you hear that, when you see that, when you hear the speeches that she's currently making? Yeah, what do you think, Jasmine?
Yeah, I can go first. Yeah, it's really inspiring to see a woman actually become VP elect. And, growing up, I saw very far and few between representation of women of color specifically. And that was always something I struggled with not being represented in media or on television or politics or whatever it may be. I'm also biracial, like she's biracial, and also a daughter of an immigrant, and she's daughter of immigrants. And so having those connecting points of you don't fit boxes like I don't fit boxes. And so I think that's just really encouraging to see someone else who has some similar identities that she holds make it this far. But yeah, Mom, do you have any thoughts for you?
I absolutely had a lot of thoughts. When it comes to voting, I don't think that you should ever vote solely based on sex or on someone's gender or on someone's ethnicity. So when President Obama ran, I didn't think every Black person should vote for him. When Hillary Clinton ran, I didn't think every woman should vote for him. So I feel the same way with Madam Vice President. However, now that she is the vice president elect, it's inspiring to me. I think that it is something that little girls need to be able to see. When I was going to school just about 15 miles away from where she grew up, I grew up in the same part of California. We didn't see anyone who looked like us on TV. We definitely didn't see anyone who looked like this in politics. And she was raised by her Indian mom, and hearing her speak herself, and she holds a lot of similar experiences to what I do, and she uses similar terms, and so that's just something that I think for little girls to dream, it gives them one more face to say, hey, I can be biracial, where many biracial children have an experience that they're never enough. In her case, she was never Black enough and she was never Indian enough. I am sure Jasmine goes through the experience of never being Indian enough and never being Lebanese enough. So this kind of lets little girls especially say, I am enough. And it gives them something to work towards. She was also the first ever South Asian person in Congress. Not male, not female. She
Yep.
was the first ever. And directly following that, she is now the first female as a vice president elect. She's also the first Asian vice president elect, South Asian. So there's a lot of firsts. And like she said, she shouldn't be the last. And so hopefully this will, whether it's her as vice president, whether it's seeing another female Supreme Court justice here, I'm hoping that for little girls, it just grows their dreams. I think their ability to dream is really important.
Yeah, I love that. And even for me, thinking about, like you were mentioning some of the boxes like for me, not being Indian enough, not being Lebanese enough, but also not being American enough. The amount of conversations I have where people, even though I was born and raised in the United States, will invalidate my American experience because I'm a woman of color. And so to see a woman of color being in the top 2 positions leading the nation of the United States of America, that's very, it means a lot, because for so often I have these conversations where I shouldn't have to justify that, yes, I am American.
Yeah. It's very interesting because obviously so far from my experience as well. And yeah, I mean, Germany has had a female leader for quite a few years now, and she's done amazingly well. And yeah, but obviously I don't have the racial experience having grown up in Germany. So that is really interesting to hear that, and to yeah, for you, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's brilliant to find out a little bit more. One of the things I was wondering, as I was listening to you guys, do you, there's obviously always this thing as a female leader, this thing that a lot of people say you have to become more male to kind of get your voice heard and to push through. What is your experience of Kamala Harris? To be honest, I had not heard much of her before she ran, or before Biden elected her or chose her as to run as vice president. But how would you characterize her? What do you think she stands for, and the things you think she, yeah, I think, yeah, that's enough of a question.
Yeah, I think when I'm watching her, I think she takes on a lot of similar characteristics I've seen other South Asian women do, whether it be facial expressions or tone of voice or whatever it may be. So I actually think that she really just exudes what it means to be a confident woman who feels empowered by her voice and uses it. But yeah, I don't know what you think, Mom. Would you say it's something similar?
Yeah, I think that, she, before being vice president-elect, she actually ran for the president position. She ran against Biden in the primaries. So she obviously is a woman who feels that she can stand on her own. And the way that she has at least publicly carried herself, I don't know her personally, but her husband is always in the background to support her. She hasn't played second to her husband. And so that's also something that's very visible out there. I think that she exudes the confidence that you are enough. If anyone saw debates that she was in, she took back her voice and interrupted when she was speaking and said, "I'm still speaking."
Absolutely.
And wasn't disrespectful about it, but commanded her space. And
exactly.
And that my assumption is that comes from being raised by a strong Indian mom. But her mom was a single mom. Her dad left when she was very young. And so it was her mom who was an intelligent woman. She was a scientist herself and raised 2 little girls by herself. So I think that her mom, and often in her speeches and in her writing, she will reference her mom. So I think that's kind of the feeling that she gives off. what that'll look like going forward, we'll have to see. But I'm excited to see what that looks like, and hopefully, regardless of who our leader ends up being in the end, we can come together and support and work towards the best, because regardless, our leaders don't stay in power forever. They are here temporarily, but as a nation of people, we have to work together forever. So hopefully we can get all on the same page and make sure that we do best for our kids.
Mm. One last question. I was wondering, is there anything, I mean, you with your friends having that experience, well, not quite yet the experience of having a female vice president, but hopefully from January onwards, but things that move and that development has encouraged you to do differently, or the way you talk to each other, or the way you encourage each other, has that changed in any way through that? And it's absolutely fine if you say no as well. But I think just the opportunities that you maybe see for yourself or the people around you, has that changed in any way?
I don't think that for myself it has changed, but I will say that one of the first social media posts that a friend posted on one of my pages was that she said that when she saw the announcement of the vice president-elect, her first thought was of a Jasmine. And she felt like she was seeing little Jasmine, up there. Like it was able to put in relation for others, put little girls of color in a space that they hadn't even pictured before. And this was from a Caucasian woman that, that all of a sudden, maybe as immigrants and as people of color, we may feel that we have the ability to do it, but for others, they can now see it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think, I mean, my mom and family has always raised me to shoot for the stars and dream big and those things, to imagine myself in these spaces. So I feel like maybe, personally, maybe it makes it seem a little bit more feasible, but I've always been inspired to reach outside of the box and to shoot for it. And so, but yeah, I definitely think it's important for everyone to see that this is possible, and that you can do it too. And that, my experience being raised, mine is not everyone's experience. And so for there to be a tangible example of a woman of color making it this far, I think is really important for so many.
I think I'm gonna finish and close with this last question that probably everyone who's watching asking: are you gonna run for president next, Jasmine? Or eventually, not next. You're gonna have a little bit more time.
Probably not, but we'll see where life takes me.
Well, Reena, if you wanted in, this would be your chance now as well to say it or not. Get your first following.
Oh, I don't even qualify. I wasn't born in the country.
Oh.
You have to be U.S. born.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Well, Jasmine, it's on you then. But thank you so much, guys. I think that's all we have time for. If any of you who are watching live or who are going to watch afterwards have any questions, Jasmine is around. She is here in Guildford. She is available for conversations. If you want to find out more about the system or about her experience, then do get in touch with her and just comment on this post. Obviously, nothing nasty. We don't want that. But anything encouraging you want to find out, or you want just to, just ask her about her experience. I think that's really, really interesting to hear a little bit more about that, how life is as a second generation immigrant kid in the US growing up there. Then do get in touch with her and ask her. Also, we have a few exciting things coming up, 2 or 3 weeks, I think it might be 3 weeks time. Me gonna be talking about football, I think. Very different, but just to mix things up. George is going to join us. Well, not going to join us. Someone is going to join George. So yeah, if you if you want to join us again and want to find out more about what George loves about football, then join us in 2 or 3 weeks' time, I think it is. And then we're gonna have another chat 2 weeks after that about Christmas, because it's all about the season. And I forgot to mention that Jasmine also worked and lived in Washington DC. She did an internship there. So definitely get in touch with her, ask her about her experience, ask her about her story. And yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be a great hour spent drinking coffee and listening to Jasmine. Brilliant. Are there any famous last words? Don't need to be famous. Any last words? Anything else you want to share? You want to say?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you so much for taking this time and for joining us. I think it was very insightful. I'm inspired by you guys, so thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you soon.
Yes.
Bye, everybody else.
Bye. Bye, everyone.